anyone else to be responsible for my feelings and my journey. I don't have to look at a congregation. I don't have to look at a religion. I don't have to, displace my accountability identifying with something. I initially thought that I would jump into blue ocean strategy as a fundamental part of who I am. But blue ocean strategy is more of a consequence rather than a foundation of the way I do things. And I often will try to stay away from talking about the spiritual side of how I do things. But the ephemeral, the external as much as the internal aspect of the human experience, the spirituality, the thing, the force that glues all the things together needs to be addressed, because I firmly believe that you cannot live your life reading books, following all these principles, especially when it comes to expressing a level of happiness through just pure rational thought. There is a level of whimsy. There's a level of externalizing things that are not easily explainable. And I'm not saying just believe in unicorns. It's more of the, how I would explain as living life leaning forward. Not standing still, but leaning forward, where you, just like in parkour, you have to keep momentum going to keep yourself from falling over. And I once was Christian. I grew up raised as a Methodist and later a Baptist. And one of the biggest challenges I had was when I learned the Bible so well, and yet when I looked to my peers, when I looked to adults as a kid, and I started to realize so many people around me did not adhere or believe in the things that I learned the way I did. And I learned the Bible so well that it impressed a lot of adults. I grew up so many years from adolescence, elementary school, all the way to going into college, living a life where I did not feel I belonged to the congregation, because the society built by these churches did not seem to align with the goodness that Jesus taught, the structure that the Old Testament put up. And I needed to find a path that really honored a very strong, very pure ethical code that did not have a level of contradiction that was lived versus what was read. I was very curious about Christian history for a very long time. I looked into why was the Christian organization split in so many different ways, both as modern day denominations, all the way to the origins when there were various different factions like the agnostics, and the bloodshed and the necessity of the Council of Nicaea, which ultimately formed the original Holy Bible amongst the Catholic Church. The politics of all these things, these man-made machinations, really disturbed me, and I struggled with my faith for many years. And I was reminded recently, watching some deconstruction videos of many people who were previously devout amongst the Protestant denominations, basically non-Catholics and non-Orthodox, which would be the Methodist, Calvinist, Seventh-day Adventist, a whole bunch of denominations. and many have left, particularly in America. American Christians have left, and there's a whole number of YouTube videos out there talking about them being so devout, praising and endorsing their faith, their Christianity, and eventually leaving the faith because after reading the Bible, it just something didn't match up with the way society has been practicing it. And I don't think I really struggle with my Christian faith anymore. If anything, I respect those who need that in their life. But as a social tradition, as an aspect of people's need to have this social identity and spiritual identity in their life, I needed a different path. I needed a path that more resembled my ethical code, that resembled my belief, that resembled the universe, the way it operated, that resembled systems thinking. And I found it. When people talk about systems thinking, when they do systems thinking, you'll find them in realms of the sciences. In business, you'll find them in the realms of strategy, business strategy. In design, you'll find them as user experience designers. But in spirituality, not enough people talk about how systems thinking matches up very well with Taoism. And if I were to ever identify with a religion, it would be Taoism. And there are two books that I look to, not because of me really delving into the religion of Taoism, but purely to use an external aspect of why I do things. Now, I could always show you Art of War. The challenge with Art of War is that it gets into some very interesting ideas of tactics and social behavior and, how to do things effectively and how to be aware of things. Now, that's important, but what's more important compared to The Art of War by Sun Tzu is Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Now, if I were to read this purely on its own, to me it's a collection of poems. But when you reflect on the universe through these poems, these collection of poems, which, all these things are you can use them alongside the fortune telling system, the I Ching. But aside from trying to adapt these poems to the hexagram fortune telling system and the entire feng shui of things, what doesn't get emphasized enough is that in Taoism, in conjunction with the Tao Te Ching, is that it teaches us impermanency and the flow of things, and that there are no absolutes, that things have an ebb, a flow, that no one can be greater because eventually they'll become low again. That, it reinforces the notion from mathematics that, any self-proving system is not absolute, that you need to go beyond that system. This is something that I often talk about when I interview for jobs, is when in any self-proving axiomatic system, it'll eventually have a flaw, and that you will never fully know that system until you become outside of it. Very much like the Russian dolls, where they could sit inside of each other, multiple layers. And I mean, I could talk about that another time, but ultimately, in this complex system of existence, in this system in and of itself, society has these complex flows that go back and forth. And if you can kind of see, you can't really see it right now, but there is a fish in the symbol of the yin yang. And that constant balance of all things, it doesn't mean that karma will eventually, affect those who have wronged you, or that karma will eventually correct things. It just emphasizes that there is a balance and none absolute, and that there's a flow that constantly exists. And so when I look at things, when you reflect, now that you know how I approach things, if you ever reflect on the previous videos that I've put out so far, take a moment to recognize that I look through all those foundational pillars as aspects of my Tao, my way, and that no one way is the absolute way, that everyone has their own path. And that's one of the wonderful things that I extracted out of the Tao Te Ching, is that it really encourages you to be yourself, to find the confidence, the flow of things. And many other enlightened thinkers only really reinforce the approach of individuality, or at least knowing your place in the universe, and you being a part of the universe as much as the universe being a part of you. What was it? Nietzsche. Or was it Nietzsche, or was it William James? Whomever said, yes, it was Nietzsche, amor fati. One must not want anything to be different, not forward, not backward, not for all eternity, not only to bear what is necessary, but to love it. It's going with the flow. It's not so much about pure nihilism. It's also about knowing how to become one with existence. Not so much to just let it be reactive, but to also at times be proactive. And it doesn't mean that I'm taking Nietzsche out of context. I do understand the challenges that he has gone through to even convey these thoughts, these very challenging thoughts that he's had with himself and just his view on life. But for the survival that Nietzsche had to go through to come up with these thoughts can be seen as an aspect of the Tao, of the way. And that's not something I was able to extrapolate from being a part of Christianity. Not to say Christianity does not have such things, but you often will have to rely on your worship or your spiritual leaders in certain religions in order to guide you in places where there are limitations to what your religious traditions are, what the biblical or the spiritual scriptures have limited viewpoints on. And that's why you have so much abundance in terms of extracurricular or extra material to explain things that are not purely explained natively in the spiritual books. And that can apply to Christianity. It can easily apply to, the Muslim faith. It can apply to any given central spiritual scripture focused book. But with that in mind, like, I'm using this as my central book, but at the same time, it doesn't give me hard, concrete truths. It only describes the impermanence, the infinite as much as the finite. That to me, there is a comfort in the unknown as much as there is of the known. It's knowing that I'm not alone in this thing as much as I am alone. It sounds very confusing. It sounds like something where I shouldn't be comfortable with this lack of permanence, that's this lack of finite truth. But if you read leadership books, if you read like philosophy books, if you just watch the world turn, it starts to make sense. And the Tao Te Ching does not say that you should just isolate yourself, but to at least recognize that the universe keeps going. I would say that this really wraps up my foundation videos, because there is so much I'm able to do and be and think and feel from this point of view. And I don't have to watch and expect anyone else to be responsible for my feelings and my journey. I don't have to look at a congregation. I don't have to look at a religion. I don't have to, displace my accountability identifying with something, because at the end of the day, this is all me. And I hope and I encourage you to consider this book as a part of your journey, because it's not like a spiritual text. It's really a set of poems, and it's very fascinating. It's very beautiful, just to meditate on it. Because I've seen many, like whether you're a Christian, whether you're any sort of other belief in existence, and they found much benefit from this book as well. And I'm not saying, and I'm not saying also read all the other Taoist books, because I'm not advocating for pure immersion in Taoism. To me, this is enough. This is enough to go through, to reflect on, to find comfort in, and maybe sometimes a little bit of discomfort. But for now, I think that's the message I wanted to give. Something to think about. And this would wrap up my Foundations series of videos detailing myself, how I approach things. And further videos will be in application of these foundations. So that said, thank you for watching. Thank you so much for all those that support me and watch this video. And I will see you guys next time. Take care.